It's not good. It's not good.
Well, he plays a violent position. I mean, the game is violent, right?
Right.
But he plays a violent position. I think the number one thing is, and I no matter like how you break this down, wear and tear, overuse, overworking himself, whatever. You know, the hard part is the balancing act that you've been kind of talking about as a head coach. I don't think it's malicious on Kyle Shanahan's behalf. Like, you're doing what you do to win a game, survive, and advance. And there are times, though, that you have to, like, and he does this with play calling where, hey, I do this to set this up later in the game, later in the season, etc. And I think that looking at it now, it's like, man, they had a couple of running backs, and Elijah's been hurt so much, and I'm sure that he went into every season thinking Elijah would be more of a factor, and not that these other guys wouldn't be more acclimated or whatever, but, like, I wish they would have worked in Jordan Mason a little more last year, because I was calling for it earlier. I didn't think he'd do what he did on Monday night, but you know, you got to get other people up to speed at times. In the case of something happening as a head coach, you got to have the big picture view. But it's hard, to your point. You're facing McVay. You're in L.A. You know, it's a 1 or 2 score game. You feel like things are precarious. I do see both sides of the coin. It's just this guy in this position, it's just, it's frustrating when he's hurt.
Well, running backs do this. And if you look at the Shanahan history, Terrell Davis, he had a great 3-4 year stretch. And injuries caught up to him. Now, he was a 6th round or undrafted. He was a late round pick, so they didn't expect nothing from Terrell Davis, and he walked his way into a Hall of Fame. Hell, for crying out loud, he was a fullback at Georgia. Fullback. But the Shanahans do go through running backs. And they will ride a guy until they can't, you know what I'm saying? Tatum Bell, Mike Bell, Landis Gary, Mike Anderson, Travis Henry. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Clinton Portis before they flipped him for Champ Bailey, the Hall of Famer. Alfred Morris. I mean, they go through running backs. The Shanahans go through running backs. But what does this injury mean? What does this injury mean? Let's go to Doug in Berkeley. What's happening, Doug?
Morning. Good morning. I'm listening to this, and it's real interesting. I got 2 points, and it's interesting to hear about the history of all these other guys. But with regard to this injury thing, you can't really compare Christian McCaffrey to these other guys. I don't think that's fair, number one. You just got to look at his history, because everybody is different. Everybody's built different. Everybody's used different. So you got to look at his history. And his history is one of being injury prone. And so that is what you have to take into account, not, running back generically, but Christian McCaffrey specifically. Number two, alluding to what you guys were just talking about and, the coach. So Shanahan's a brilliant coach, brilliant mind, but he's a football coach. He's a football coach kind of, I'm going to use this guy because this is what we need to do. Yeah. And he, second in his mind is, am I going to use him up? That's not the first thing. And that, with a commodity as valuable as McCaffrey, I think the nuance and the brilliance that Shanahan shows in designing plays and in other aspects, that's what he needs to use in how to handle a diamond like McCaffrey. And he's treating him just like a running back. We all saw this coming. So those are the two things I think. Just going forward, when McCaffrey gets back, use him, but use him judiciously because he's real valuable. Thanks for taking the call.
Good call. Now I'm looking at another game log here, just because I'm trying to say, boy, where could Shanahan have been better, right? So in the third quarter, Niners start the fourth quarter, and they punt.
What are we talking? What game?
Seattle game, Thanksgiving night.
Okay.
Niners are 8-3, 4-2 away.
I'm just looking at
week. Short Thanksgiving week.
Yeah.
Short week.
I think Elijah was good in that fourth quarter.
Yeah. So McCaffrey got a carry with 10:47 left in the game, 12 yards, and the rest of the way it was Elijah Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at times, short week, maybe a blowout. They did try to scale back off of Christian McCaffrey. Now we could just be nitpicking here when it comes to and because I understand there's some games where I'm thinking, okay, maybe now you can get the starters out. That goes through my mind as well.
It's not even about getting starters out. It's about working other guys in so that they get a rhythm. Because we know that running back is a rhythm thing. Like, for example, Jordan Mason, he looked a little skittish early on. And then as he settled in, you're going to do better. Not everyone can get one touch a quarter and be good.
I hear that. But here's my thought process when it comes to that stuff. You look at it that way, which is fair. Fair to look at a running back, get into a rhythm. Hey, let's get him some snaps. I'll look at it as just get my guys out so I can have them for the playoffs. Because in the playoffs, I'm not going to be counting on the Elijah Mitchells. I'm going to be counting on CMC. I'm going to be counting on Debo, Ayuk, Kittle. Those guys are the guys that's going to get me to the promised land. Now, these other ancillary pieces, we get through the regular season with them, but in the playoffs, they're not going to be getting much burn anyway.
I mean, in the playoffs this year, they did.
But the way I look, they had to because Debo got hurt.
But that's what
I'm saying. Debo gets hurt. So we're looking at Christian McCaffrey. Debo doesn't even touch the ball as much as Christian McCaffrey, and he got hurt in the first quarter.
No, but what I'm saying is that your job as a coach is to, is to, if you are a playoff level team, is to work in other guys so that they're available and ready for you down the stretch. You always got to be thinking ahead.
But a coach is always thinking, too, in the playoffs, I got my guys. If I get to the playoffs and they're healthy, a coach doesn't think, boy, this guy's going to get hurt. Now I got to count on this guy or count on that guy. That's why you stay ready in the film room or whatnot. But Debo got hurt. And we know Debo has been more injury prone than Christian McCaffrey.
I look Andy Reid, Belichick, Bill Walsh. If a guy has a specific role, they're going to try to utilize it throughout the year so that they are prepared for that one playoff moment. That's just the way I view it.
But you know what,
I remember every week coming in here, like, man, I'd love to get Jordan Mason some touches. And I distinctly remember and Baldy having this conversation.
Yeah, no, I remember it too. And you know what? Did Christian McCaffrey get hurt in the playoffs? He's one of your best players. But come on, we don't know if that has any bearing on the injury right now. McCaffrey played all those snaps. Now, I pointed out a couple games where he didn't play in the fourth quarter because everybody makes it seem like he took every single snap of every single game, and I knew that wasn't the case. But he played in the playoffs. He wasn't the one who got hurt. The guy who got hurt in the playoffs was a guy who maybe gets 10 touches a game in Debo Samuel, and he got hurt twice.
I don't think CMC was his best version in the playoffs because it's a long year.
Well, defenses are better.
Position.
But defenses are better. Teams are better.
But like that's also baked into like I need CMC to be the dynamic CMC January and February for this team.
But you got to think about it, Shasky, not to cut you off.
December.
But you got to think about it though. With Debo now out, now there's more eyes on Christian McCaffrey. Now the defense could suffocate Christian McCaffrey a little more. And even in 17 carries, 98 yards against Green Bay. You know what I'm saying? Another 7 catches for 30. He still got over 100 scrimmage yards in that football game. And that was with more eyes on CMC and more eyes on Ayuk because you don't have Debo Samuel.
We're not going to see it the same way. It's okay. Like every week I came in, I said, hey, look, man, even if you have to split him out wide to keep him on the field, but not have him get a touch, just have him run a route or whatever, you got to work in that other running back, right? You just have to do it because the position is so delicate, and you're going to need other people in specific spots. Mason, to me, was a guy I thought they'd use him more in short yardage situations. Maybe he could be more of a pounder just to kind of mix it up. Like, I'm a believer in mixing it up a little.
But even McCaffrey, though, is a better short yardage running back than Jordan Mason. He's just a better player.
Mason didn't get any looks.
He's just a better player. So I can't blame the injury on last year and the usage or whatnot. You did what you had to do. You did what you had to do to get to the Super Bowl, and you damn near won it. And then McCaffrey held up. This injury with the calf strain and the Achilles tendons, I don't have any clue or any idea whether or not last year. Now, did they ask Willard or Did they ask Dr. Feely did they ask him yesterday about last year's usage? Does that have any bearing on this year's injury? They didn't ask him that? They didn't ask him anything? Because that's what I want to know from a doctor. Can we get Dr. Rob Panya on in the 9 o'clock hour? How much does last year have any bearing on it? The wear and tear or whatnot? How much does that have to do with the calf strain / the Achilles tendon? Because we're talking football here. 888-957-9570. And more importantly, can this team overcome the loss of Christian McCaffrey? Here's what Bonnie thought on that.
But you can't play at the same level without Christian McCaffrey. Credit Jordan Mason and everything else on Monday night, but you're not going to play at the same level without him. He's just too much of a force for Kyle Shanahan to move around and put in different positions and exploit matchups in the passing game. But, he has this history now, and I'm the biggest Christian McCaffrey fan there is. But he has this history. He had 400 touches one year in Carolina, and he was banged up for much of the next 2 seasons.
Baldy, what's the solution for this injury?
The problem is that he's such a worker. He's such a guy that his workouts are important. His training is important. It's hard for him to rest. And really tendonitis is something, and I don't know exactly what the issue is because we're all just hearing about it really for the first time, the extent of this thing. Tendonitis doesn't go away without rest for the most part. You can treat it with anti-inflammatories. There's things you can do. An inflamed tendon, I don't care where it's at in the body, rest is usually the number one bromide in order to get that cleared up. And so that's just not his mentality. So I got to see how they treat this right now.
All right, Dr. Feely, Shasky, real quick, I'll let you react to this. How should the Niners handle McCaffrey's workload moving forward?
I think when you look at his usage rate last year, he was 18 to 22 touches a game, maybe up to 25. 28 carries for Jordan Mason was the most a Kyle Shanahan player has ever had in a game. So ideally, you have him in the 15 to 20, and I think that's totally reasonable. I think the other nice thing is as soon as you put him out there, even if he's not the first, second, or third option, he's a decoy because he's so good. So I think once he gets out there, he will play. I think the athletic training staff and the medical staff is doing everything right. You take it slow with him now, especially if you're going to win a couple games with his backup. It's a long season. It's hopefully is another season that goes well into February. You want him fresh and you want him feeling as good as possible. And we know all these players don't feel 100% by the end of the year. So you want to conserve him as much as possible for the second half of the year and into the playoffs.
That's the part for me. I completely agree. And I think that's where they've got a, almost like a basketball team kind of tempering themselves and waiting for the playoffs. Like I would treat this McCaffrey thing. If it takes 8 weeks to get right, 5 weeks to get right, 10 weeks to get right, so be it. Whatever it takes, you want him to be at his most optimal, even if he's going to be hampered to a degree, most optimal come week 1 of the playoffs. Like, that's how they have to handle this. And even then, he could get hurt in 3 plays, right? There's no guarantees one way or the other. But you're going to try to set yourself up as best you can so that he is at most peak physical optimal shape. But he also needs to get into the flow, right? Because that's an element of it as well. So this is a tough one. I think this is one of the more difficult things they've had to navigate outside of like the Jimmy injury where you're using a backup quarterback.
Yep, no doubt. Download the Odyssey app, 95.7 The Game. Thousands of other stations and millions of podcasts are free on the Odyssey app. Sports talk, music, news, and podcasts are all available. Follow your favorite teams, stations, and radio shows. Catch amazing interviews, too, like Dr. Feely that you missed with Willard and Dibbs as he breaks down Christian McCaffrey's injury. You are listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ, FM, and AC1 San Francisco, and Odyssey Sports